BMW F800GS vs Triumph Tiger 800XC, comparison test. 1. It's the USA's northernmost, easternmost and westernmost state. It's larger than Texas, California and Montana combined. Its east-west span, from its lower peninsula that extends into Canada to the outermost of the Aleutian Islands, could reach from Jacksonville, Florida, to Sacramento, California. But with only 700,000 residents, it's one of the world's most sparsely populated areas, and half of those people live in just one city, Anchorage. Everywhere else, moose, bear and caribou outnumber humans, and dirt roads far outnumber paved ones. Some small towns even have no road systems connecting them to other towns. Much of the state sees no darkness in summer, no daylight in winter. It's home to North America's tallest mountain, 20,320-foot Mount McKinley, along with 3 million lakes, chains of active volcanoes and half of the world's glaciers. It's Alaska, a place the state's license plates call the last frontier. 2. And what better way to experience the backcountry wonders of our 49th state than on BMW's F800GS and Triumph's brand new Tiger 800XC? The adventure bike segment is one of motorcycling's fastest growing, and these two middleweights are widening the appeal of that activity to more riders. These 800s are almost as capable on-road as the biggies like the BMW R1200GS and KTM 990 Adventure, but slightly more manageable off-road, not to mention thousands less expensive. 3. For the most part, those similarities held up once we hit the road. On the way to the Canadian Yukon. Yeah, I know, this is billed as an Alaskan adventure, but MotoQuest's route first took us northeast and across the border to spend a fun day at the annual Dust to Dawson adventure bike event in rustic, isolated Dawson City. Our ride to Dawson began in Anchorage on Route 1, a highway that terminates some 300 miles north at the village of Dock. On that mostly smooth asphalt road, the Tiger gradually emerged as a marginally better pure street machine, even as the weather morphed from partly cloudy to overcast to steady drizzle. The Triumph's seat is slightly cushier for droning along the open road, its three-cylinder engine a little smoother at highway speeds than the GS's parallel twin, its taller windscreen more protective. And although the Triumph has quicker steering geometry, 24.3 degrees/3.8 inches of trail versus the GS's 26/4.6, the BMW was a little more nervous at higher speeds. 4. From Talk to the Wee community of Chicken, Pop. 7, and on to Poker Creek, Pop. 2, site of the northernmost U.S.-Canada land border crossing, the road offered up alternating sections of clean pavement, broken pavement, dirt, mud and deep, fresh gravel. From the border to Dawson on the top of the World Highway, the surfaces were almost exclusively dirt, mud and gravel. And forget the drizzle of the previous day, steady rain and heavy fog stalked us all the way to Dawson, preventing us from even being aware of any interesting sights along the way. Both machines had been fitted with Continental TKC knobbies by the Motorcycle Shop, the actual name of the BMW, Triumph dealer in Anchorage, before we picked them up, and those tires attributed greatly to the bike's surprising stability and excellent grip, even on wet, loose surfaces in faster corners. In some remote sections, where Jeff and I saw our speedometers nudging 100 miles per hour as we splashed through goo and gravel, neither bike ever did anything to accelerate our heart rates. 5. After a beautiful, cloudless day of play in Dawson, we motored back into Alaska under a light but steady rain. We were headed for the Denali Highway, a 131-mile dirt road that runs east-west between the tiny towns of Paxson, Pop. 43, and Cantwell, Pop. 222. IQ magazine rated that road 6th among the top 10 world's most scenic drives, but the low ceiling again kept most of those panoramas blocked from our view. Our destination was the Gracious House, a B&B/campground/bar/air taxi, gas stop, tire service, welding and truck repair facility at the 82-mile mark on the Denali. The simplistic charm of this one-stop shop is the lifelong work of Butch and Carol Grashes, who've been operating the facility for more than 40 years. 6. If we were looking for deciding factors in our comparison of the GS and XC, we would discover them during the next day's ride not far from Gracious House. Freeman promised a stunning view from the top of a local mountain that could only be accessed on a trail involving 2-track, single-track and even a bit of no-track, plus more than a dozen water crossings and mudholes. Other factors also distanced the Beamer from the Triumph. The XC's footpegs are a little too far forward, so standing on the pegs in rough terrain is more difficult and tiring. The Tiger's tall windscreen blocks the view of the trail just ahead when the rider is seated. 7. Last but far from least, the plastic mounts on the XC's saddlebags are way too fragile for adventure riding. I snapped the mounts off the left bag when I brushed a small tree so lightly that its bark was largely undisturbed. A few days later, a tip-over in a deep mud hole not only broke the right bag mounts but also snapped off a large portion of the bag's top front corner. In both instances, we had to use straps to hold the bags in place. A few tip-overs on the BMW, a couple of them more severe than those on the Triumph, caused the bags either no damage or so little that they could be snapped back onto their brackets. 8. Triumph has no reason to be ashamed here. For a first attempt at a true adventure bike, previous Tigers were really just street bikes dolled up in adventure guise. The folks at Hinckley have done a bang-up job, producing a very good motorcycle that just needs a little fine-tuning of its off-road capabilities. But when it comes to adventure riding, BMW has the right answers because it knows how to ask the right questions. As it should. The F800GS, after all, isn't BMW's first rodeo. The company has been in the adventure bike business a long time, about 30 years, give or take. 9. You see that proclamation on just about every sign, every t-shirt, every bumper sticker and other mention of the annual Dust to Dawson, get-together. The event is instead described as a gathering of like-minded motorcyclists. For the vast majority of attendees, the like in their mindedness is for adventure riding, evidenced by the fact that 99% of the bikes roaming Dawson City's dirt streets or parked next to its wooden sidewalks are BMW GSs, Kawasaki KLR 650S, KTM Adventures, Suzuki V-Stroms and the occasional Ducati Multistrada. You might spot a Honda XR 650L, HD Bagger or Goldwing Trike, but they're usually lost in a 200-plus strong sea of adventure bikes. 10. Dust to Dawson is the almost accidental creation of three riders, Jim Coleman, John Cash Register and a gentleman known only as Fighter who hatched the idea over a few beers in Dawson back in 1992. Long story short, word spread, more riders gradually joined the party and before long, the ride became an event. Originally, it was called the Over-the-Top Hop, since Dawson sits at the east end of the top of the World Highway. But that name didn't fit well on a t-shirt, so the ride was rechristened Dust to Dawson, shortened even farther for logo purposes to D2D.